Family and Consumer Sciences Extension at the University of Kentucky. Our agents share research knowledge with individuals, families, and communities to improve quality of life. Building strong families, building Kentucky. It starts with us.
Hello, I'm Vicki Wynn with the Marshall County Extension Office. I'm the Family and Consumer Sciences Agent. And here today we want to talk about slow cooking for fast times. And we know that fast times kind of get in the way of doing the things that we need to do as a family, and especially when it comes to preparing nutritious meals. And time management plays a big part in slow cooking. So when you think about being prepared with slow cooking, you have to think ahead. You have to think about what your meal plan is. Have you got everything, all your groceries that you need to prepare that meal? And making sure that you allow enough time to get that prepared and allow the time that it takes to cook slowly. So I want to share with you today some of the slow cookers that are available now. And you know, slow cookers have come a long way. They became very popular back in the 1970s. And I recall, I've been married 45 years, and I recall in the mid-70s, for my bridal shower, I got 2 slow cookers. And I thought, oh my goodness, I don't need 2 slow cookers. Well, I went ahead and hung on to them. One was avocado green, one was burnt orange. So I kept them both, and you know what? After a while, I realized you can cook 2 different things at the same time and take care of a meal. And it worked out just great, because I didn't see at the time how versatile and how handy those 2 slow cookers were going to be. But typically a 4-quart and a 6-quart are what you're going to find most often. But nowadays they also make a 1-quart. And this size is so convenient and handy for, say, college students or those who are single, living alone. The 1-quart cooker can take care of cooking a casserole or a vegetable or some soup in just a very short time. And it's really good to have this as an option. The 9x13 casserole slow cooker is very popular, and I know a lot of people who enjoy using this for hash brown casseroles, for green bean casseroles, for chicken and rice and broccoli casseroles. So you can also cook beans, you can also cook mac and cheese. So it's very, very versatile in what you can prepare. And the people who really prefer this one tell me that it cooks faster, because a slow cooker is just a metal frame with an earthenware or crock insert, and then the heating element goes around in between. So this one has the space more spread out. It will allow the cooking to be more even and more quickly prepared. So these types are a little bit different from what we've known in the past, but they have great features that we all can enjoy. Also, nowadays we can secure the lids on our slow cookers for travel. We can fasten those down to the little, there we go, get those snapped in place. And I know you probably, many of you, heard horror stories about transporting a slow cooker with some baked beans or some soup, and the lid shifted a little bit, and well, you know the rest of the story. But these help secure the lid to the cooker, and we want to always remember that while we're cooking, we don't want to have those snap down. So we want to be able, at the end of the cooking time, to be able to remove that lid, and we don't need it to be fastened down. This one as well has the same feature, so we can secure that. Make sure that we've got it all together so that it can travel without that accident happening. This one is a little bit different from all the rest. This is a Wi-Fi slow cooker. This one has not only a timer that you can set for a certain number of hours at a certain temperature, but it also can be controlled remotely. You can download the app to your cell phone, your smartphone, and you can control the cooking time, the cooking temperature, and I'll say this is probably one of the most high-tech slow cookers that I've seen. We've had this one a couple of years, so I'm sure they've probably made improvements. There are so many features. You just have to decide what's best for you, what you're comfortable using. Even with this 9x13, there is a timer, a digital timer where you can see the low, medium, or high, or warm, and you can also set it for the amount of time. Now when it finishes cooking to the amount of time you've set it for, it will automatically go to warm. So we want to always make sure we're cooking with the safe temperature. On low, the temperature is about 200 to 240 degrees Fahrenheit. On high, it's 300 to 340. So typically it's going to take twice as long on low as it does on high if you're cooking the same thing. So these are just some options. There's some of the different slow cookers that are available. And we want to go over some of the safety tips. There are some important safety tips that I think everyone should know, and we'll go over those. The very first thing we want to start with is that you have a clean surface to work with, because typically when you're working with a slow cooker, you are using a variety of ingredients. You are using things from the refrigerator, things from the pantry, and we always want to make sure we have a clean work surface. So first thing, of course, is just cleaning with a mild soap or just a typical kitchen spray that you might have, or whatever you prefer to use, just to clean the surface. Remove any crumbs that might be there, any residue from other foods that you've prepared. But the next step that is even more important than just cleaning your surface is sanitizing your surface. And just 1 tablespoon of bleach to a gallon of water is enough to kill harmful bacteria on your work surface. So it's good to have some bleach water mixed up for sanitizing, and this is what everyone recommends, even in the restaurant industry, to sanitize with. So I prefer to use a paper towel, that way it can be disposed. And sometimes I know we're guilty of reusing kitchen rags or sponges, and just to be on the safe side, we don't want to cross-contaminate anything in the kitchen while we're preparing our food. So I think it's best to go ahead, clean, sanitize, and then toss that paper towel. So after we have sanitized our workspace, the next thing we need to keep in mind that any of the perishable food that we're going to be working with needs to stay in the refrigerator up until the time you're ready to put it in the slow cooker. And that means whether it's chopped vegetables, meat, fish, poultry, anything that bacteria can multiply rapidly on any raw food. We want to make sure that we've kept that at the coolest possible temperature up until the time it goes in our slow cooker. We need to make sure that it's been refrigerated at the proper temperature, and I'm a very big fan of thermometers in your refrigerator. We know the danger zone for food spoilage and bacteria to grow is 40 degrees to 140 degrees. So your refrigerator needs to be at about 34, 35 at the most. We want to make sure that we're keeping cold food cold and hot food hot. We want to make sure that we keep that perishable food in that refrigerator until time to put it in the slow cooker. The next thing we'll talk about is thawing your ingredients. And I've had the question before, is it okay to put a frozen chicken in a slow cooker? Because it's going to get warm, it's going to defrost. And the answer to that is no, it is not okay. We never put frozen meat in our slow cookers. We want to make sure that the ingredients are thawed properly, and that means in the refrigerator. That means we have to think ahead even more and put that in the refrigerator to thaw, and sometimes it may take a day or two for that to completely thaw. So keep that in mind if you're planning on cooking something that includes an ingredient that's in your freezer. We want to make sure that it is safely thawed. You could either do it in the refrigerator or the microwave, but we want to make sure that it is never thawed at room temperature. That's definitely something to avoid. So the next thing we want to talk about is how full does that slow cooker need to be? How much can we put in that slow cooker? It should never be more than 2/3 full. After you've put your recipe in or your food that you're going to be preparing in the slow cooker, you want to make sure that it's about half full and no more than 2/3. We want to make sure that the heat distribution is very even, and overfilling your slow cooker could definitely interfere with the cooking process. So half to 2/3 is the maximum amount that we want to fill. The next thing that I feel like is very, very important, and I know a lot of people are guilty of this, myself included, is always leave the lid on your slow cooker. Never peek in. I mean, the lids are clear. You're able to see inside, and it's important to leave that lid in place. As you can see, there's a gasket around the edge that keeps it sealed, keeps it very tight, and make sure. I remember the first slow cookers that were made, the earthenware was a little uneven in places, and that lid wanted to move a little bit. So they have made improvements by adding the gaskets that give it a more tight, secure fit. But every time you raise the lid and peek inside, that adds 20 more minutes to the cooking process. So we want to make sure that we leave it alone, we let it cook, and we don't want to be peeking inside and letting that moisture out, because the moisture that accumulates from the condensation is going back into the food, and that's part of the cooking process. So we want to make sure that we're not peeking inside frequently, or at very little if possible. And we really want to make sure that we keep that heat in there, because every time you raise the lid, it could drop the temperature by as much as 10 to 15 degrees. And that's why it has to build up again, get warmer, and make sure that it has the proper amount of cooking time. We also need to make sure that the food we're cooking cooks to the proper amount of doneness. And I'm just a very big proponent on using thermometers, food thermometers, and making sure that our meat, the internal temperature, is at the proper amount. We don't need to leave that to chance. The digital thermometers are recommended because they're instant, they're very easy to use, and you can check the internal temperature of whatever you're cooking. We know that 145 degrees is for beef, veal, lamb, pork. If you're cooking steaks or roast of any kind, we want to make sure that it's at 145 degrees internal temperature. Also, after you've turned it off, you've checked the temperature and all is good, we need to let that set for about 5 to 10 minutes because that's a resting period for that meat. It's going to serve a whole lot easier if you let it rest for just a bit. And we know that that heat is being held in there, so we know that the longer you leave it in there, it's going to continue to cook a little bit. So let it rest after you've turned it off, and it'll be much easier to serve. Also, fish. If you're cooking fish in your slow cooker, 145 degrees for fish, and the outer surface of that fish will start to look a little opaque, almost see-through, but 145 degrees is what it needs to test at. Now, ground meat, meat mixtures, whether it be pork, sausage, or turkey or chicken, it needs to be at 160 degrees. So a little bit hotter. 160 needs to be the internal temperature for those that you're testing for eggs and ground meat, such as the ones I've mentioned. Also, casseroles that contain poultry, chicken, or turkey need to be at 165. So a little bit warmer even for casseroles, but if you do cook the proper temperature for the proper amount of time, everything should be good. But leaving nothing to chance, it's just better policy to go ahead and check with that thermometer to make sure that it has reached the safe internal temperature. Now let's talk a little bit about leftovers. If you're cooking in a slow cooker of this size, or any size really, if it's more food than what you're going to be using at a meal or for a gathering that you're going to, maybe one of these days we can go back to those gatherings, but we need to make sure that your leftovers are stored properly. Now, we have some examples of good containers that are good storage after the food has been prepared. And the reason we want to not put it in something very deep is that it needs to cool down properly. It needs to be at a safe temperature. Storing it in the refrigerator, we want to make sure that when we put it in these containers that it's going to cool down quickly and be safe to eat when it's reheated back to that proper internal temperature. So we recommend 2 inches, no more than 2 inches deep for storing your leftovers. And there are a lot of different kinds of containers out there. These are also good to use. I particularly like the clear ones because I can see what's in there. And these do a good job of letting me see what's in there and doesn't get kind of pushed to the back and forgotten when you're storing it in the refrigerator. It's not recommended to reheat food in your slow cooker. Of course, the crocks are meant to be cooked in, and you can also serve out of, but it's not recommended to put these in the refrigerator or put them in the oven or the microwave. So you always want to remove the leftover food and make sure that you have divided it and put it into containers. I like to go ahead and put it in a size container that might be a one-person meal and divide it out among several containers so that you're not reheating the large leftovers. You're only going to reheat what one person will eat at a time. So making sure that we store those leftovers properly ensures a safe meal later on. And again, I want to reiterate that the crock needs to be kept with the slow cooker. Doesn't need to be put in the oven, microwave, or the refrigerator. A change in temperatures can sometimes crack these crocks, so we don't want to expose it to different temperatures and risk ruining our cooker. So also, I've got some individual small containers. These are good if you just have small amounts left over, or if you want to pack these in a lunch. And this is a good size. I really recommend having some single serve size containers for the leftovers. I want to remind that cleanup is much easier if you spray some pan release in your slow cooker before you put in the ingredients that you're going to be cooking, Also, you can find at the grocery store or where you shop for food, they have slow cooker liners, which is sort of like a large plastic bag, they hold up to higher temperatures. But those are very, very convenient if you're needing to use your slow cooker for something else. It's good to have those liners. You can go ahead and prepare that food, take it out, and then load it up with another one. So I highly recommend those for easy cleanup and making your cooker more available if you're, especially around the holidays. I know when you want to cook a lot of things ahead of time, that's a good way to go ahead and use your slow cooker. Make sure that you're keeping everything safe, but yet cleanup time is just very minimal to none whenever you use those liners. So a lot of good information about slow cookers and the versatility, the availability of these to families now. Keeping in mind that a lot of improvements have been made. If you've got an older slow cooker and you think, I'm not sure that this really cooks like it used to, or the element may not be operating up to speed, I would recommend replacing it. They've got several affordable options, and the features now that are on slow cookers make it worthwhile to invest in a new one. And the thing that we need to remember as well, slow cookers were not only intended to assist with mealtime and cooking over a longer period, they also can tenderize tougher cuts of meat. And when I said they became popular in the 70s, it was because of the energy saving feature. This was a much more efficient way to prepare meals, and you didn't heat up your kitchen. You didn't have to stand over your stove and prepare this meal. So a lot less energy, and also because of the feature that it was slow cooking over time, it is very good to tenderize those less desirable cuts of meat, or those that we would tend to say are more tough and not quite as tender, but the slow cooking over that time tenderizes that meat. So very economical on both those counts, and that is another reason that slow cookers have continued to be popular over all these years. At the Extension office, if you'd like more information about recipes for slow cookers, or if you would like one of our publications about the care and use of slow cookers, we certainly have those available. So please call on us or stop by, and we'd be more than happy to assist you with that. So until next time, I'm Vicki Wynn with the Marshall County Extension Office.